Quant was created in 2018. It's a pretty interesting project because unlike most of the projects that we cover, the L1s and L2s, this project doesn't actually have a blockchain. What it really is, well, their main product that they offer is called the OverLedger OS, OverLedger operating system. And really what their main mission is they want to bring a lot of enterprises into the Web3 space. So let's dive a little deep into the founder. So the founder's name is Gilbert Verdian. He's worked at a couple different central banks. I know he worked at the Fed and then also in England at one of their large banks or either the central bank there, and also worked in the healthcare space. So he's had experience in finance. He's had experience in non-finance roles. And what he really saw in the healthcare space was that patients had these networks that provided insurance and provided coverage for their operations. However, it was really difficult to work between networks and talk to doctors between networks. And so, just like we see nowadays in the Web3 space, interoperability was a huge problem for those healthcare providers. And so he really set out in 2018 here to provide on-ramps for enterprises and for them to be able to work across different blockchain networks. So that was the whole thesis behind the OverLedger operating system. But yeah, like we talked about, so it's not a blockchain. What it really is it's a software as a service. It's essentially a platform that you can have your developers hook into through APIs that will, talk to the Bitcoin blockchain, the Ethereum, Ripple, Stellar, and you'll be able to query and write to those blockchains all through this platform. So actually a very interesting concept. Basically wants to create like a centralized layer zero, essentially. I think we've talked about other layer zeros like Polkadot in the past, where they want to be able to make these blockchains work super well together. And so they've created certain software development kits, SDKs, for developers to create these things called maps, which are essentially decentralized applications, DApp, that work across chain. So multi-chain dApps. So it's a pretty novel concept. It's one that I think has got a lot of momentum, and we've been seeing that in the token price over the last couple months here. But yeah, they really want to be able to allow developers to create projects on multiple chains, which I think we've probably covered in the past, but just for people that maybe haven't tuned into other episodes, different blockchains handle different operations better. So when you look at the blockchain, Bitcoin blockchain, the Ethereum blockchain, those are two blockchains that do a great job of holding their value, providing high security to the data that's being housed on that network, compared to maybe Solana or to a Stellar, where those are super high transaction per second TPS blockchains. So you can do a ton of different operations within those networks. Whereas maybe you can't do it as much on the Ethereum side, but you're providing great security with maybe some of the more sensitive data you have within your application. So super interesting project. And really what they want to be able to do is, like I said, allow people to create applications on top of them. They want enterprises to come in and say, hey, it doesn't really matter which one you use, just use us and we'll figure out the best way to facilitate good data storage and good connections, high throughput connections with these blockchains. So yeah, that's a little bit of an overview. Zoe, what's your take on the project?
Yeah, I think you really hit the nail on the head with a lot of what you were saying. I completely agree. It's interesting to see how they're basically it's a B2B relationship, and to the other business they're saying, we know there's a lot going on under the hood. We'll just kind of take it upon us to make sure you have a very smooth experience. And when we think about like what the future of crypto looks like, you know, we've been talking about on this channel a lot, like the future has to be an area where, you know, customer experience is put at the top. And if the customer experience is improving, that's going to be paramount over pretty much everything. And so one of the things I wanted to highlight, along with everything that Evan said, is like, what is the problem that they're actually solving at the moment, right? Or that they're aiming to solve, right? And so when you think about what does this process look like today, if I wanted to move across chains and I wanted to say, okay, maybe I want to use Ethereum for this, and then I want to go use Avalanche for something else, and then Solana for something else, and then Phantom for something else. I want to be using a bunch of chains at the same time. How does that work today? And like, what is the issue there? Right now, most people are probably familiar with the concept of bridging tokens, and that's what you have to do nowadays in this instance, right? So if I'm on Ethereum and I want to move some assets over to Avalanche to use a dApp that's built on Avalanche, or do something on Avalanche, I have to go through a bridge, probably pay a fee. It's probably a pretty clunky process, and as we've all seen, bridges are extremely vulnerable to hacks. Right? Almost every month, I feel like we see a bridge get exploited for some disgusting amount of money, right? And so right now, that bridging process is definitely clunky, and it's an area where the customer experience needs to be improved. It's not a question of like, you know, if it should be. It just needs to be for kind of crypto to move forward. And there's a bunch of different people kind of trying to solve this problem of interoperability, right? And so when we talk about interoperability, this is exactly what we're trying to say, right? It's kind of a buzzword that floats around crypto. You've probably heard it a ton, but that's really what it means, is having fluidity and being able to use multiple blockchains when you feel like using it. So these guys, as Evan alluded to when he was going through it, what the heck? There we go. You guys can see this? Yeah. So they have this OverLedger technology, and this is kind of a visual of exactly what Evan was saying, right? This OverLedger technology is not a blockchain in and of itself. It actually sits on top of different blockchain networks. So you can imagine like Ethereum, Avalanche, Phantom, all these different blockchains sitting underneath with their software solutions sitting on top, right? And depending on what's the most optimal for a given function or a given application, they would use whichever blockchain is kind of the most optimal for any given scenario. So yeah, that's pretty much what I had in terms of what they do and what they're trying to do. The last thing I kind of wanted to touch on was, you know, clearly it's an area in terms of interoperability that is obviously a popular problem to try to solve. And with that comes a lot of competition, right? So we've kind of touched on how they're aiming to solve the problem. A couple other companies in the space, I'll go back here. So we've got Layer 0. And so this is an interesting company. I actually talked to a few guys here. They're, you know, omni-chain interoperability protocol. They have applications actually built on top of them. So one of the ones that I've used in the past is called Stargate. And so this is a like cross-chain interoperability liquidity protocol, right? So instead of basically having to bridge assets back and forth to different chains, over here you can access cross-chain liquidity. So this is a pretty interesting use case, I think. It is like a little bit clunky, like it's not as smooth as I would like, but just an example of something that, you know, a competitor is building. Also, this company, Alexar, I haven't actually used their product at all, but also a company in the space that I've seen at different conferences and stuff that are also trying to do, you know, kind of like a permission cross-chain communication, proof of stake kind of network. So just a couple of their competitors to highlight for folks to keep an eye on.
Do either
you
of
have
these
anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was going to ask you, do either of these have their own blockchain, or are they also a software as a service solution?
I believe Layer 0 I don't know if they actually have their own blockchain or if they're built on top of another blockchain.
Okay. Because I think that's a big differentiator on this side is because there, it's a software as a service model. You get basically a 12-month contract for the Quant Network, and then you pay your contract fees through the Quant token. So I think that's when we were talking about it's seen some pretty crazy price action for the last couple months here. That's something where it's an ERC20 token that doesn't have a ton of functionality in the space or utility in the space, but is used to pay a lot of the fees that you have for their service. So, I think like talking the bull case for this project and then the bear case after, the bull case is that they make it super easy for developers to hop in and use their services. Just like I'm a JavaScript developer, and so hopping into the Node libraries, I was already able to easily find their software development kit where I could add it to my project and hook up to their APIs. So I thought that was pretty cool and pretty slick. It seems like they've got great partners in the space. We were talking before this that, I think there was Oracle and then a couple other huge SaaS players that had also partnered with them. So I don't know. I'd be interested to hear your guys' takes on kind of what they have going for them as well in the bull case for Quant Network.
Yeah, I mean, I think we always talk about it, right? Interoperability is kind of the future here. So whoever starts to execute on that is going to be kind of the main player here moving forward, right? And I think Soham brought a great point up about just customer experience in general, right? I think, and especially something we talked about with Sui or however you say the L1 blockchain, that's the kind of new one, is what's the appetite for a lot of these developers to move over from something like Solidity over to like a language like Move, right? Is Quant something that's going to be able to prevent a lot of groups from having to do that, right? Where they're essentially going to handle it. They're going to say, here's the thing that you have. This is exactly what you want to do. Okay, we're going to put that on Polygon, right? Or here's what you have. This is a little bit different. We're going to put this on Solana, right? Is that kind of how this is going to operate, where you don't actually have to kind of go in and do all of the dirty work and they're going to kind of handle that for you? I think that can be incredible because from a customer experience perspective, what we always talk about on this channel is the fact that what's going to push this thing forward is when people don't even realize that they're utilizing Web3, right? So that's kind of my take on it. And I think, from a bull case perspective, if they're able to solve a lot of these problems from a customer experience perspective and just from like integrating and getting these people into these systems without even realizing it, that's what's really going to make a difference. So, yeah.
Yeah, so many good points there, Mata. And yeah, so I think you hit the nail on the head there with the customer experience. And I feel like in the last 3 to 5 years, we've almost seen this other like area of the crypto market open up where it's in between the actual technology, like the base layer technology of like Ethereum, Bitcoin, blockchain, and the actual customer. And then it's like, how do there's these companies that sit in between and facilitate that and say, hey, any company that wants to get involved with this, we'll make it easy for you and we'll make it a software as a service. So it's like almost a Web 2.5 where it's a bridge to what customers can access to Web3, to Mata's point, without having to do all of like the BS of, for example, having someone who's never bought Ethereum before set up a MetaMask or never bought an NFT before set up a MetaMask and go through all that stuff, right? So I think applying that to all these different business cases has kind of opened up this little like market window in the crypto industry where you see things like Quant, Layer Zero, Axelar, companies like that. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, Sia. And, just talking about those Web 2.5 companies, the first thing that comes to mind is Alchemy. And I mean, it's a company that you feel like is almost in every project. One of their tools is used for some type of, developer testing or, just checking how the different servers are holding up or the network's holding up. So I think you're right. It could be super bullish in that sense where there's a lot of success in that 2.5 space. They could play really well there. I think on the bear side, it's is this a place in Web3 that we need it to be decentralized? Is this too much of a choke point where, you know, you could see real power given to the person that was, you know, steering this ship essentially, you know? And so, yeah, it's a question of like, as more and more things get built out, and, you know, Quant Network has more applications built on top of it. Is this a layer in the Web3 sandwich that we want to be decentralized, or is centralized fine and we can continue to move forward? So, and little caveat there, like there is decentralization in their operating system. A lot of their oracles are decentralized, so it's not a fully centralized solution. But, you know, just being a software as a service in a company like that, you know, that makes you centralized. So, yeah, a lot to unpack there, but it's a pretty interesting project, to say the least.
Definitely an interesting project, and just the concept of interoperability is something that's definitely not going anywhere. So we'll definitely be keeping tabs on it. Obviously, the price has, we didn't look at the chart, but the price has rocketed here in the last month or so. We're up about like 70%. So definitely a lot to look forward to, and we'll be keeping a pulse on this project moving forward. And as always, keeping you guys up to date with the latest and greatest.